Blueies and Chewies, we're back in town for the absolute finale of the Rugby World Cup series. I'm joined by my good pal Dwight. Dwight, firstly, mate, how are you? And thanks for all your support, mate, for the World Cup. It's been we've obviously had a few good discussions, typically on a Monday night when we're bruised and battered from the weekend. But thanks again, mate, and how you doing?
I'm very good. No, thank you for having me. It's been superb. I tell you what, I'm feeling a lot happier and a lot stronger because, been having a lot of saltiness thrown our way, especially here in New Zealand. But what people don't appreciate is, we use salt to make biltong, which makes us happy and makes us stronger. So, no, I'm good. Been very, very happy the Springboks won the World Cup, though. I genuinely knew it would be a struggle for them, and I thought it would be a bridge too far, but they've conquered. They're all conquering Springboks.
100%, mate. Look, as a South African growing up in Joburg, you'll be used to looking over your back shoulder, mate. Ready for an aggressive Kiwi or a hijacker in the past. So I think you'll be absolutely fine, mate. Albeit, I think you've got to just be careful your banter doesn't go a bit too far. What we will try do in this podcast is try be fairly objective as we can, while still celebrating what was history, and we'll discuss a few key points on stats-wise. Anyway, what made it some of the most miraculous achievements, certainly not only in rugby but potentially in sport. Before we delve into a couple of points or key takeaways from the game, and then a number of other discussions, including our views on the World Rugby Team of the Year. Quick one, outside of these two teams, mate. Eddie Jones resigned from the Wallabies after a tumultuous tenure. What was meant to be the big return turned into the big flop. What do you think, mate?
I'm still trying to process it all, to be honest, but part of me goes, how bad is Australian rugby? If Eddie's coming with all these hopes and prayers and paychecks, and he's gone, this is too hard, and he's walked. It's really quite eye-opening. But also, I think you always want to see people setting themselves up for success, and you want to see structures around people setting themselves up for success. And unfortunately, this Eddie Jones episode, and there we might not say it might not be the last, but I think everything was set up for failure. There wasn't much set up for success. So yeah, it's it's been entertaining, but it hasn't been happy.
Yeah, look, I love Eddie. He's had a fabulous career as a coach. He's an absolute gem for sound bites out of press conferences. But I do think, he I dare say his coaching style hasn't evolved to the modern day sport. He would sort of remind me of a Mourinho of rugby, and very much a dictatorship, where if you look at, again, we'll point to the obvious, the Springboks, Rassie giving players the opportunity to lead a line-out strategy, a backline strategy, a scrub strategy ahead of the week's game, them coming together with ideas, bringing to the table, many of whom would get knocked back, but the players feel involved, where I just think you can't tell me that a hooper's been let go because he's bad for the team. I cannot fundamentally believe that, and I just think it's probably because he may have pushed back, and I don't even think that's wrong. As long as you do it in the right way. But to take that team with as fewer caps, not a goal kicker, to Rugby World Cup off the back of some big statements upon taking the job, talking about snatch and grabs and ability to win World Cups. At the end of the day, these statements will come back and bite.
It made a whole advertising campaigin about how
it was great. It was great, but at the end of the day, when you're absolutely that awful, people are going to point fingers.
the one thing with Eddie moving is what you will find is the truth will come out now. The Michael Hoopers and everyone else. I think Quade Cooper's already come out. He's never been shy of a word anyway, and a bit of controversy. But they'll probably come out now, and you'll hear a bit more. So it'll be interesting to see. But I mean, generally, I do hope that Australian rugby can find a bit of stability, and they can move forward, because the world needs a strong Australian rugby team. They're also probably in the most competitive market per se for their talent and their players.
Yeah.
And from what I've read, that's what Eddie said. The problem is, he goes, we need structural change. There's been a 20-year decline in Wallaby rugby, which is quite telling, given that's how long he's been out of Australian rugby. So what he thinks of himself. But he went in there to want to make structural changes, and he said the appetite to make those structural changes didn't match his. So let's see what happens. But I mean, he coached the Boks. They also didn't win. So
having Hooper in the change room would have loved to be a fly in the wall during those strategy chats. But look, I think just finally on that point, mate, I definitely don't think it's just Eddie's fault. As being a Man U fan, you can't have 10 however many coaches that have come since the great Sir Alex, and it's always the coach's fault. Ultimately you've got to look at the boys at the top of the tree, and the guys that run or steer the ship and steer it very poorly are the ones that are not held accountable, and they're there year after year. If you had this is your space, mate, in terms of finance. If you've got a listed company that's underperformed for 20 years, I dare say executives, chairmen, CEOs aren't hanging around that long. They're not getting 20-year stints before they're eventually shown the door. They're getting a couple of years to make an impact. And so, whilst Eddie, I think, could have chosen his words a little bit more wisely, albeit he was probably trying to boost people's confidence, I do think his coaching style would probably be suited to a slightly more subservient culture in sort of Japan. I just don't think it's really going to sort of work anywhere else in the world, I'll be honest.
Yeah, no, that it's very true. He's very much got a culture, like you touched on earlier about the culture he brings and how he goes in his approach. But he's also and this is coming from conversations I've had with people that worked very closely with him, he's very much one of those old school coaches that wants to break you down and then rebuild you up. Where all these modern day coaches just build 80% positive, 20% negative type thing. So he has to go to a place where that, as you say, more authoritarian, there's an autocratic style will work. And that is generally
Japan's the obvious one. So look, we'll wait and see.
Listen, he might also be done after this. There's
I'll be surprised
from
if
a branding perspective. Yeah, but remember, you spoke about it from a business perspective now. Is, when you're looking as, let's just say, from a director's lens or viewpoint, you're not getting extremely good performance, but you're getting a lot of controversy. And unfortunately, Eddie's kind of been painted himself into that corner. I mean, I'm with you. I want to see him there. Personally, though, and I mean, this sounds uber critical from two guys sitting doing a podcast, but I don't know if Eddie's actually a head coach material. I think he's way better as a consultant. He's an assistant coach and analyst, the guy that will come in there, that will question everything and do it. But he's not the point man, especially on relationships. And that needs to be the realm of the head coach. So maybe he does find a role somewhere else, but let's see.
We'll see, mate. Let's get talking about the big one, the big dance that happened. Probably a bit delayed in this conversation, but we'll jump straight into a couple of key takeaways from the game, mate.
We've been celebrating.
How I did on the weekend was many a beer was had. Right, if we sort of talk about New Zealand, makes again what we want to try to be as reflective and hopefully as objective as possible. I definitely think South Africa, and this was my big fear going into the game after seeing how we performed against England. I just didn't feel there was any juice in the legs. We spoke about Mr. Dependable in Ibn Etzebeth, or Elizabeth, as he's now famously known as, just literally having no juice in the legs. The boys looked tired, and I think that was that 15, 20 minutes. I thought if we had parity in the game, and we showed that we had the energy levels there, then I was going to be quite confident. But that was my big concern, and I thought we started off unbelievably well. Just again with the intensity, with the closing down, the rush defense causing a couple of issues straight off the bat. But what a fight back by New Zealand in that second half.
Yeah, no, it was. And I mean, to put things in perspective, and you do have to give the All Blacks credit, that they weren't at their best and they weren't at their kind of skillful, all-encompassing self that we usually see, but they were dogged. And I mean, lots been made that they played with 14 men and that kind of thing. But to put it in perspective, when they lost 35-7 in Twickenham, and remember they scored a try right at the end, so it was pretty much like 35-0.
Yeah.
They went to 14 men at 52 minutes. They played 52 minutes of the game with 14 men. In that final, it was 53.
Yeah.
So, they played nearly the same amount of time as they did in Twickenham with 14 men. But they kept it to a 1-point game. And I do think they get commended for that. They threw a lot at it. And they stuck to it. And I do honestly, though, believe that they didn't believe enough at the beginning.
Yeah.
And a lot of other people
shell
couldn't.
shocked though, right?
They were. You've lost your skipper.
Springboks started off well. Frizzell gets 10 minutes in the bin.
Minutes.
They couldn't quite find their feet, could they? In that first 30 to 40 minutes.
I think the Boks threw them off, and it started.
I
think it was a minute 52, or maybe a bit longer.
Damn.
Yeah, there's a berry there.
When Richie Mwanga's head almost got taken off.
Yeah. So, and without getting into the controversy too hard, when someone that's over 2 meters tall can tackle someone who's 174, in the rib cage, cut him in half.
I don't think there's any controversy in that. And we'll obviously go through some of the stats, but for what I think is one of the best games of rugby I've ever seen by a individual in Peter Steph du Toit, for not one of those tackles to be of concern in a sport now that's had high controversy with the tackle technique, just shows how many monster hits you can dish out and still do it in the right way. I mean, I dare say I'm equally give as much credit to Jody Barrett than I would, or Geordie Barrett rather, than I would Peter Steph, because fucking hell, to take those hits and get up.
Oh, bro, just
sweet
keep
Jesus,
going.
that bloke must have been in awful pain. But Jesus, man, he wore those shots.
He did. He wore them like a champ. But no, it comes to a point, like, I think in Union we've forgotten that correct tackle technique can be devastating. You can use it as a weapon. We actually saw it in the last World Cup 2019 with Sam Underhill from the English.
Monster, one of the Kamikaze twins.
One of the Kamikaze twins, but he comes from a US wrestling background. So like they live and breathe below the waist type thing. And he absolutely pummels people with just good tackle technique, and hopefully we can get a bit of that back. But no, listen, Peter Steph, 28 tackles, most ever in a World Cup final, going past the great Richie McCaw. And he's tied with some pretty impressive names who have made 28 tackles in a test match, which is Terry Dusautoir, Toby Faletau, and Johnny Gray in the last World Cup. So, that was there. But I think the one thing that those tackles, 28 tackles is impressive. The dominance of those 28 tackles, though, was huge. I mean, there was a couple where he obviously hit Geordie Barrett. I think 4 of those 28 tackles were in Geordie Barrett. And we spoke on the last podcast. I said, the Springboks, they want to have you play off the front of the line out so that they can get those tail gunners. And that happened early in the game. And, I mean, you saw Geordie Barrett was looking for the big overpass, trying to skip the winger. Yeah. And before he realised what was happening, his ass was on the ground. So, no, it was really good. But also special shout-out. So, the record in the World Cup finals, 18 by, as I said, McCaw. Dion Fourie, the unsung hero, this is a man. When people want to understand South African resilience, this is a guy that's ended up playing behind John Smith, Bismarck du Plessis, then Malcolm Marx, and Bongi Mbonambi, and all these other guys. He literally couldn't get a contract. He had to change position. He stuck to it. He's come on. He's played 77 minutes in a World Cup final. Ended up captaining the team.
Yep.
And he made 20 tackles. He even went past McCaw in that final.
Yeah.
So
the line-outs went to pot, but I mean his work rate for a guy that's older than me, geez, it just makes you wonder, mate. And honestly, for a guy to, be the oldest player ever to debut as a Springbok, to then only a few years later, be stepping in as captain for 10 minutes while Sia's off. It's one of the stories of sport that we love. It's the reason why we love sport, mate. And 100%. Talking about Sia, I think we talked about, certainly in the build-up to the World Cup when we were previewing the teams, even though South Africa came off a record win against the All Blacks at Twickenham, I think the one thing we were critical of was not taking points, and it took us a while. It probably worked in our favour that the All Blacks were getting themselves in a bit of discipline trouble, but the fact that we had a lot of chances, went awry before we actually put points on the board. And you think about that try when Sia's running down the line, and you just think, God, he puts that away. I'm like, put it on the inside, and then I was like, oh, he's going to give it on the outside, and then he doesn't give it, and then we don't score. I was like, oh my God. But at that point, thinking, we're on top here. We're going to end the game, and to think that we weren't going to score another point from there.
The what was interesting with it though, there's a few parts to it, but that was straight off the kick-off pretty much of the second half, and we just Rusty must have, I don't know, brought the hairdryer or something. But we did start the second half with a hiss and a roar. I did watch where he didn't give the pass from another angle, and the truth is, Mwanga actually
wasn't that clear. Wasn't as clear as it looked.
Really good job of just cutting his angles off. But in saying that, I still would have backed us to score.
Yeah.
I don't want to talk about the laws, but I found it really unfair. So he offloaded for Delende gets tackled before the try line. Geordie Barrett actually bloody octopuses
seems to actually bring him
and
over the try line. Yeah.
Letter of the law, you've made a tackle before the try line, you have to release the player and you have to allow him to place the ball.
Yeah.
It should have been a penalty to us, but I don't want to get into it.
We'll plenty of time to get on to referees,
but we had that. And then literally, I think it was 90 seconds later, Oren Sanedi scores.
Was ruled off.
Yeah, Oren Sanedi scores.
Oh, sorry, of course, yeah.
Yep. And then, you go, well, wow, that could have been 2 tries straight off different game. But what then happened is Oren's foot was in touch, 5-metre line out, and Sia, by his own accord, did his naughtiness. And then yellow card, and then the All Blacks only kicked up a gear.
Yeah.
And then it was game on. So, listen, interesting game, but I mean, also people say the Springboks can't score tries. Well, if we had scored those 2, very different outcome, very different game. But give it to the All Blacks. They stuck to it. They did it. I think the best way I could describe this game, and it's cliched as hell, but this is the greatest rivalry in rugby, is there was an unstoppable force in the All Blacks, and especially with their attacking prowess and how they like to play, and they met an immovable object, which was the Springbok defence.
Yeah.
It was a great game. It wasn't. There's obviously the one thing I didn't want was to talk about the controversy in the referees. We've done that, but that's where the game is. But in fairness, there's not a lot of learning.
I think there's only a couple of points in there. We'll get to them just to give our reflection on them. But I do think it's worth certainly speaking about. The one thing I would note is I I thought Will Jordan wasn't really a factor, considering the guy that was coming in with 8 tries to his name. But what was quite interesting was before, obviously, New Zealand went back-to-back themselves. If you think about, I think, was it 2007 that they went out to France in Cardiff?
Yeah, 2007.
Yeah, and you remember how they didn't go for a drop goal. There was sort of discussion at the time, why do New Zealand never go for drop goals? It's quite interesting that I would have thought at some point that they would have attempted a drop goal.
Yeah. No, they were looking at it. I mean, they did a few things. They've definitely learned from their pain. They talk about a lot. There's a really cool thing. It's probably worth talking about it now. So this was Gilbert Enoka's last game with the All Blacks. I went to a talk where he spoke, and he was part of that 07. And since then, they've created this rope. And culturally, I'm getting this very wrong, but it's essentially a rope or a tapestry, and it's really, really long. And at every test match afterwards, they tie like a bow or a ribbon, and so it makes this long rope with all these different colours and all these. And as I said, it makes like a tapestry. And every single one of those is their learnings and their lessons of the game. And they come back, and when they talk about their journey and their story and their learnings, this comes out before test matches and after test matches. So they did learn their lessons, but listen, pressure's a funny thing. It's there's a famous Mike Tyson thing. Everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face.
Yeah.
So you could plan for drop goals, you could do that, but man, the Springboks hustled them, and you saw. I think the best time you saw it was actually when the All Blacks were exiting, when they were deep in their 22. The Springboks went up a gear with the hustle. Like there was fuck was charge all down.
Yeah, well, that's breakdown that we won for our last kick, and jeez, had I known at the time that was our last points for the game. I probably would have turned off then, thinking there's no way New Zealand won't get over 12 points. But if you remember, I don't know if it was Dion Ferree or Dwayne Vermeulen wins the jackal, and you see Sia, and he's like, like he looked so jacked up, man. But again, it was in, like you say, it was in their 22. We were so aggressive, and so intense on not giving them an easy out. It definitely seemed to almost galvanise them a little bit whenever they were in their 22, to literally make sure that every exit, every ruck was going to be highly competitive.
And you saw it, so it was great. And, I mean, that was the one thing you got to love with these Springboks. There's a great clip going around by Bernard Jackman where he just says about the Springboks, effort and energy on defence, and it's worth watching. And that's why we just love these Springboks, And the truth is pretty simple: defence wins championships, and it just requires a bit of effort. So we'll go from there. But listen, coming back to the actual game, I mean, there was all these micro little things, but if we look at the macro level, I think the key thing the All Blacks did really well was they took away our line out and they took away our scrum. Our scrum was nowhere near as dominant. I thought we were actually, when they brought in Nepo Laulala, he really gave us a tough time in that scrum. I think those last
that's
two
where
scrums,
the Foree piece was obviously a tough one, because
he's not a set piece hooker. Let's just call it. He's a breakdown.
But the line-out made sense. That I think we spoke about it. They had a great line-out coming in. Even with Bongi, we struggled against England. I think we've always been strong on the defensive end. But our line-out certainly.
So we lost 4 and we won 6 line-outs. And I think they lost 2. So no, they did that, and they took that away from us, which I thought was good. But also, if we look at the positives of what the Springboks did, I spoke last week about the most important thing against the All Blacks is they want lightning quick ball. That lightning quick ball is how they just take your oxygen away and they kill you. Their ruck speed in that final was 5.05 seconds.
Yeah, unbelievable.
they do everything they can to get below 3.5 seconds, ideally at 3.
Usually they operate probably at half of that, right?
So as much as Dion Fourie and the way they've selected players didn't help some of the set piece strengths of South Africa, it helps our breakdown.
Yep.
And again, the key guy there, we speak about him every week, is Kwagga Smith.
Yep.
Throughout the World Cup, he had a 41% effectiveness on defensive breakdowns. So that means he either disrupted the ball or he turned it over.
And to nearly be half the rucks that you attack, to have an impact. When you consider how good teams are in terms of retaining ball, how they train and practice that, to still have that kind of impact.
But he's also just got such a good feel for the game.
Yes, absolutely.
Like I love
picking the ball out of the sky.
You pick Will Jordan went, most dangerous man. Bloody Colby picked him up and ran him off like he was running off to the bedroom with his wife. And Kwagga Smith's just like, I'll take that, thank you. Oh, and he's gone. So there was a few moments of brilliance like that. But again, just efforts and effort. I mean, put it in context, 209 tackles, huge amount of tackles. The most the Springboks had made before that in a World Cup was 158, which was the final against England.
Wow.
So, 33% more tackles.
Yeah, unbelievable effort. And
50 more than any tackle. Yeah.
It goes to credit to New Zealand. But if I look at two different players, mate, and thinking about how we won this, and I know we're talking about maybe the negative points or what New Zealand could have done, all in a game that they lost by 1 point. Richie Mo'unga, if I think about him, reflected probably not only this game, but also the tenure of New Zealand over the last 2, 3, 4 years. When that guy is on, as he was against Ireland, they're almost unstoppable, basically. He's silky. He's one of the best Super Rugby players I've ever seen, maybe the best. I know that the standard of the competition wasn't what it was when we were growing up and the like, but, some of the stuff he did over COVID, I remember the quick tap, and he sort of did a grubber to himself over 10 metres and things like that. That is class. But the knock-ons at times, and this is, again, compliments to South Africa and the pressure they put on. But there were a couple of points there. Certainly the one knock-on. I think Faf just jumped out of the line. I think probably knew that that he had no chance of obviously stopping. I think they had a 2 or 3 man overlap, and he just caused Richie Mo'unga's eyes to displaced from the ball, and he knocked it on. And then when you're thinking about someone like Faf, and I think about the charge down on Christie at the end there, when I think about the ankle tap as he did against France, if you remember, when they were in hot pursuit, he sort of broke out of the line and ankle tapped, I think it was Olivon, to do that to Papali'i, especially considering he's running it, Willie Leroux. He runs over Willie. There's not much more to do than just get to the line. Exactly. So, and I just think about how that reflects, and just that extra ankle tap, the effort that he put in to get to that ankle tap, and both ankle taps, really for me, just, despite Peter Steph being overwhelming the man of the match, just those sort of instances of going above and beyond and just making that big play when it matters. The Kwagga Smiths at the breakdown, the Dions, everyone seemed to play their part in just when it mattered, coming up with a big play.
Yeah, listen, you want to talk about big plays and desperation, putting your body on the line. I think Orance's tackle on Rico Oni summed that up beautifully. But that was probably a telling point in the game, but also a good summary of the game. Rico, who I've got a lot of time and respect for, he's not the most loved rugby player in New Zealand, I can tell you, probably the world even. But he had the ball in the wrong hand there. And a little technical error like that, you get unstuck when you're playing against people as determined as the Springboks. And it was just brilliant. Like, you saw him trying to go, you thought, he's in for all money here. And Orance hits him, dislodges the ball, and just in case he didn't do that, Colby was there to clean up and do it again. It's just
and we see where Colby starts from.
Yeah, that effort, mate.
Huh?
You can't beat that effort. So
Is it for the hele weet nie wat ons weet?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. That people don't underestimate the desperation, but also the desire to succeed of South Africans. And you see it there. You know, it's live for everyone to see. And I mean, like, some of those guys come from upbringings most people in the developed world wouldn't comprehend. And here they are playing in the world stage with celebrities cheering them on.
Yep, 100%, mate. We saw Jason Momoa and Drickus next door. That could be a decent tussle.
And that would be. Oh, I don't know. It's one way in my money.
Yeah, it would be. Albeit he's a right handsome bastard, Jason Momoa, isn't he? So better give him some credit.
I'm not up to my celebrity play as well as I should, but also Taika Waititi was in the same box with him.
Yeah.
And his missus is some famous pop star. That's the one.
Yeah.
So I mean, listen, they were all there.
Fed, Djokovic.
Whole bunch of people didn't realise he has a dual nationality and is half South African. Now they do.
Loves the Boks, mate. Loves the Boks. Right, if we move on from some of those key points, mate, and takeaways from the game, and we think about the hosts, the French, how do you believe they hosted the World Cup, mate?
One thing before we just get onto that I would just like to touch on. Sorry, because I'm just checking my notes. But we spoke about Pieter-Steph du Toit.
Yes.
And how good he was. You know, monumental. He did the Springboks 7 jersey justice, because there's been some great men who've played in that. You know, the Ruben Creers of the world and Andre Fenters and Johan Smiths and now him. But for people that don't know, I would highly suggest you go watch, there's a short documentary on him called The Open Side, done by World Rugby. You want to talk about a man who's come through adversity. So he doesn't come from the underprivileged part of South Africa. Like, his family have a beautiful wine farm. I don't think he could ever claim he's underprivileged. He's the 26th Pieter-Steph du Toit or something in his family. It's the firstborn in his family gets that name. But his grandfather was a Springbok as well. But what he's gone through, the ligaments that hold his knee together are actually hamstring tendons from his father.
From his dad, yeah.
Yeah. He nearly lost his leg in 2020. He had a 40 centimeter cut to relieve swelling that they couldn't close. Yet he ended up in that, he talks about it, he lost 10 kilos in 2 weeks. And only because he lost that much weight, he didn't get his leg amputated. So when you can think of people can go from that to put in a performance like he did, you've got to have respect for the guy. And he did really well. So
100%, mate. I mean, while we're on it, because I was going to sort of speak about a couple of these chaps, and you're 100% right, mate. You've summed him up, and apparently he's up for Minister of Defence in the South African government. Hey,
the Malmesbury missile.
Malmesbury missile. And I will sort of touch shortly on the comments of on Sia, but we spoke about Dion Fourie and what a story that was. Handré Pollard, we think about a guy that's finished the World Cup 2019 as a hero, goes to Montpellier as the highest paid player with Patel, barely gets a game because he's injured, comes back, plays second fiddle. He then goes to Leicester and starts to show some real signs of form, some really good tries, getting them back playing really well, injured before the World Cup. To come back and then kick 13 for 13 in the World Cup. When you consider that final kick...
That weren't easy kicks.
That final kick that he made, that first one, it was proper squeaky bum top. I was like, Jesus, but that was like shaving the upper right. Then the next one, he got it in by a metre. I was like, I'm not liking these, Andre. Let's get them down right down the middle where you've been fucking leaving them, mate. But when you consider the French kick, the kick against England, and that final kick from that 46 metres out to drop it over by a hairline, just unbelievable, mate. The guy's got ice running through his veins, unbelievable. And then when I also think about someone like Jesse Kriel, who again has played second fiddle for me to the best centre in the world in Lekanyo Am for as long as he has. He's been in and out of the team. I think it maybe isn't that easy to walk away from the Springboks, but he's always been there.
He made the big mistake in Brighton. People hung him for that. They wanted to kill him. They thought, So he's come a long way.
He's not been a beloved Springbok. And when you consider what he's done in this World Cup, mate, he's been outstanding. Probably had his best game in the Boks jersey in the quarterfinal. He was just unbelievable in that quarterfinal.
Best outside centre in the whole World Cup.
Yeah,
I thought he
unbelievable,
was,
mate. So those are a couple. I think maybe before we shoot off, I'll also mention the one hero that takes sort of no introduction. That is the captain of the Boks. We know where he's come from, mate. I think the big things for me was when he was given the captaincy by Rossi, was his humility, but also his courage to be quite open in taking feedback, getting support from the Dwayne Vermeulens, the Andre Pollards, and not sort of thinking, right, I've got to be the only voice in the room, but being willing and quite happy to share it openly. That he takes advice, and he's not sort of that sort of dictatorship style, captaincy style. I think takes a lot of courage. When I think about the praise that he's given each team along the way in this World Cup, this is a guy that certainly, apparently in his early days at Western Province with Scurra and a few other boys sharing a house, he was enjoying himself on the bevy and the like, and was sort of warned a couple of times that he could forgo his talents, or not reach his potential, and to see, his beautiful family, but then how he's sort of turned into this leader, and he really has matured as a leader, I think, over the last 4 years. A couple more points, mate. The video of him going into the change rooms, Jesse Creel's there, looks like a dude who's just come out of a no man's land in World War One. After a big shift, after a big push on the Western Front, and he just goes over and he just gives him a kiss and a cuddle to say well done, on a big game. And when I think about how we commented on the Curry situation and the reported sort of racist comment and the like, South Africans should not throw, we all know we shouldn't be throwing stones at glass houses given our history. I just think a lot of people were like, this is what was said and get over it and that type of thing. At least, again, maybe the small percentage of people said it, that was sort of said online. He heard what he heard. I don't think there was bad blood, but the fact that Sia said, he's certainly against any kind of abuse that he and his family have got, again, I think reflects well on him. How he sort of ran after Colby after the final, gave him a cuddle after that, sort of, maybe thinking that he had given the game away. And then finally, mate, in the press conference after winning the World Cup, they speak about Peter Steph Toy's game, and then Nienaber speaks about chasing a white bag. Not only does you see when he's hearing the stats and he's just shaking his head in awe of what Peter Steph just achieved, but also compliment him on his voice growing in the change room, because he does come across as quite a quiet chap, despite being an absolute beast on the pitch.
Well mannered, yep.
Yeah, 100%, mate. But he's spoken about, in the England game in particular, he really got the boys fighting, even when the chips were against us. And then to finish with that sort of piece on what Jacques Nienaber's been to him, not only since becoming coach officially, but also how he sort of coached him through the years and how he sort of treats him like a human and a dad and a husband and the like.
Yeah.
Mate, the guy is just class, mate. What a hero. What a bloody hero.
There's a lot to unpack there.
Sorry, I know I've just absolutely unloaded. But I just can't, it's just so easy. It's so easy because it's just such easy moments to remember him.
He's a man you've always had a lot of admiration and respect for. But this campaign in particular, I have just found every interaction or anything you've seen with him is that, that admiration's just gone a notch higher.
Yeah.
Everything you've said is 100% correct and accurate. but I think you also have to see it in the context of to create such a harmonious environment. Don't get me wrong, the coaches,
100%.
everyone's all part of that. But Rassie and Jacques making those tough calls and disappointing a lot of guys. To leave a Andre Pollard out of a World Cup, to leave a Lacania Arm out of a World Cup.
To pull guys off early.
Yeah, to
in every game.
All of those tough things. To be the skipper in that kind of environment is really hard.
Yeah, 100%.
Because you're often in the middle of those tough conversations, and you've got to sympathise with both parties. Mate, he is a remarkable skipper, and nothing sums it up better to me. Like when I can say he loves those teammates of his.
There's nothing fake about him.
Clip of when he bolting out to celebrate, you can see he heads out with all the guys, and he stops and he turns and he goes and looks for Cheslin Colby.
Yeah, but you know what? I think Cheslin. I will have a look at it. I think he did the same in 2019. I think Cheslin was the first guy he sort of hugged. I think Colby went down. Obviously, he was on the pitch at the time, but Colby just went down for a prayer, and he sort of came and put his arm over him. But for that one, he sort of ran on, and then you see him looking.
And he was like, "Where's he?" And he looks for him. He shrugs off the bloody logistics managers. Comes tries to grab him, and he's like, "Nah, just where's he?" And so no, mate, like 100%.
But the comments to Nienaber, sort of, he was speaking about Peter Steff, and then he sort of, it looked like he was just again doing what I done, is just unloaded a bit of love and affection. But to comment so nicely on Jacques and wish him well, you know.
Yeah. But I think that's also Sia's way of setting challenges for these guys. And I think he's directly said there that he's not giving up their jersey. I think they want to beat Ireland in the next couple of years.
That's going to be huge.
But, Peter Steff du Toit might be the next Springbok captain.
Should be interesting, mate. I mean, I dare say so many of those boys have... I hope their bodies hold up. When I think about...
Not the way they play, mate.
Yeah, Jesus. When I think about the coaching staff, when I think about how often Rassie Erasmus has put himself at the forefront of controversy, attention, when we think about...
but only in the difficult times.
Well, as I was going to say,
time to celebrate, to do everything. Unlike the South African politicians.
Funnily enough, mate, you got right onto it. You beat me to it. I think about... I was going to touch on Eddie Jones creating a siege mentality when there was no need to that early on in your tenure, and Rassie doing that at the right times, and then you see the trophy presentation come out. Who's at the front? Old mate Ramaphosa, getting his little ticket, of getting his hands on the trophy pretty early on, and
giving them a public holiday in 6 weeks' time.
And where are the boys? Where are the boys? At the back, right at the back, giving each other a bit of a hug and a handshake for a job well done, and the tears at the airport by Rassie, mate. One of the great videos.
Yeah, guy. For people that haven't seen it, there's a video at the final whistle, where he goes straight off the final whistle. Someone from behind the coach's box, and he just breaks, man. It's well worth a watch. And it's also funny seeing the two Irish, the technical analyst and then Felix Jones celebrating. And there's a fair bit of profanity, but it's in Irish, so it's joyful.
Yes. Right, I know we said we don't want to sort of jump on Wayne Barnes' back, and that's certainly not my intention. I mean, I think... if I'm a Kiwi and I'm listening to us, I'll go, well, of course you're not going to jump on his back because you won. Like for me, if you don't know the difference between a Sam Cane tackle and a Sia Khaleesi tackle in how his body is positioned, again, as you said, he did probably get it wrong here and did deserve a yellow, but he's clearly bent at the knees and bent at the hips, versus upright position in Sam Cane. While I don't think the chap was
and one other important
had malicious intent.
Yeah, but so you've nailed it. Like the key things I look at is the idea of extension in the hip, the knee, and the ankle. Those three. And then the other thing is also they talk about points of contact, but they also go, where's the ball? Yeah. Sia tackles the ball. Sam Cane's well above the ball.
Yeah. Yeah, I think and again, people are talking about the TMO getting involved. And that is a discussion. Maybe not within the 24 hours after the game, because it does come across as sour grapes. But look, I understand that. I'm happy to sort of indulge in those conversations. Again, I don't know how they weren't called back for the first try that never stood for New Zealand, quite rightfully so. I mean, he said, there was no knock on. It's like, they should have been, Wayne, pull it back now, mate. They've knocked it on.
Three knock-ons.
I know, it's like, Jesus, mate, come on. But I think that maybe the most obvious one, and I think would have been harsh, but when you consider the timing of the game was still 15, 20 minutes in, I think maybe a slightly tough call on Severe at the breakdown for when I said Sia was like going mental and really happy. Oh, no, sorry, that wasn't it. That was a previous decision. Yeah. When he said he wasn't releasing, I thought that was slightly harsh. But I mean, when you're looking at something like that,
that's the one they've been really upset with. Yeah, because
one decision,
how did
one
you put
major
us back
decision
for a try?
Yeah.
Listen, there's a few things to unpack. I think the number one thing is the Springboks have proven one thing: they would have found a way to win, and they would have won by 1 point to prove a point, if you know what I mean. But so as much as the calls were a bit controversial, remember I spoke a few episodes ago about the picture you paint the referee. And Severe was like, oh, it's tough, but he's like, I didn't paint a good picture. There used to be a thing where you used to actually clap. Do that or do a clap. Just so you, and like, I know that sounds harsh, but it's a small game in a final. And Wayne Barnes didn't actually say, I got it wrong. He said, on second looks, but the way it looked to me, you didn't release.
Yeah.
So, listen, the problem is, and this comes back to everything, rugby needs to take a real hard look about the type of game we want, because I do fear, for a variety of reasons, there's been nothing ill toward on this, but we've got too technical, but we're also missing a few basic things. Like, a lot of what's happening is contradictory. So like we talk about, we don't want head-high tackles because of player safety, but also can ruin a spectacle. Everyone forgets at the Women's World Cup that happened, that's exactly what happened. England got a red card in the final, and it was deserved, but that player's actions took the world's best player, literally the equivalent is Jana Lomu, out of a game in a World Cup final. It's the same as Bongio Manambi played for 3 minutes because of foul play. So we need to get more consistent on it, but like, I actually thought Frizzell was really lucky. Like, I know it was an accident. I just have got a very big problem.
It's a definite yellow
with the roll. Yeah, no, but if you go and actually have a look, go back and look at it.
I don't think it was malicious, but I mean, it's just brutal when you consider that, especially the poor Bongio,
the malicious
first World Cup.
Yeah, the malicious part's not part of it, but if you go back and have a look, is where he comes into the ruck from.
Yeah, that crocodile roll. You're just always injuring players, but you're always injuring players in that scenario.
If you're going to come into a ruck from a side, you're planning to injure someone.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm saying. That's what rugby just has to work on. I think we just have to simplify things, but get really strict on some basic things, like where you enter a ruck from. And
another one is the HIA. So if Creel is hit high, then he should be going off, right? And so I do think the Springboks used a bit of the dark arts in the quarterfinals with a couple of HIAs, but I dare say the famous All Black teams have been doing that all day long.
If you keep creating rules, you're creating loopholes.
Yeah.
So, and I think that's what and listen, come back. I thought Wayne Barnes has been one of the best referees for a long time. It's unfortunate he'll have this tarnish on his career. I don't think it was. I thought he had quite a good game.
It's tarnished
I think it was the TMO was the issue.
Yeah.
If to be dead honest with you, we're going to chat about it, so we might as well bring it up now. The All Blacks crying foul when they haven't fixed their own indiscretions is a problem. They are consistently getting more cards than anyone else. This goes back to Sonny Bill Williams getting a red card in the 2017 British and Irish Lions series.
Yeah.
They've then clocked up numerous yellow cards. They've got 2 red cards in this World Cup by itself.
Yeah. Most penalised team, card-wise, I think, in the end. Don't get me wrong, you play the most games, but still.
Foster, in his post-match, said, we knew this was what we were going to get because this was the same TMO we had against Ireland. Well, it's like, then why did you still not change your behaviour? You know, the biggest thing is I worked with a very good sports psychologist, a guy called Gareth Rosley, and the biggest thing we always used to talk about, the only thing you actually control, especially in life, but on the rugby field, is how you react to a situation. And the number one thing you want to do is you don't want to give away your authority. And when Sam Cane's gone and put himself in that position and done what he's done, he's given away his authority. His involvement in the game depended on someone else. So, yeah, it's harsh, but this is the game that's high-performance sports. High-performance sport can be harsh, and it's a cruel mistress, and there's learnings.
There should be no complaints about the cards that they're obvious, especially on how the game's been refereed the last 2 years. No. Yeah, just been absolutely.
I would still love to see the orange card, if you want to call it that, though, instead of reds, where it's.
These are the times they should be trying out these different situations, right? So whether someone goes in the bin for 30 minutes or 20 30 minutes, or
even if it's 10, but they're not allowed back on. Done. Yeah. That's your game done.
Yeah. Or you bring on a different player. Because again, the American sport was spoken about is no sport in America, or at least I think in the NFL, for instance, someone can leave the pitch, but you're allowed to bring someone else on. Basically, the idea is that they're a lesser player.
Yeah, and let's go back to, like we've spoken about it again, is what's our number one thing that we love about rugby? It's a contest. We'll keep it a contest. Don't, So, yeah, I think the game needs to look at itself. I don't think Wayne Barnes needs to look at it himself. I thought he conducted himself incredibly well. His communication was very clear, and he didn't do too much coaching. Which,
100%. I agree, mate. If we
you want to talk about France, I think.
We'll get to France. I mean, you spoke about Foster there. He's obviously exiting. It's been he's always sort of been a bit of a maligned figure, much like Sam Cane over these last 3 or 4 years. I thought it was one of the strangest decisions I've ever seen to keep him, but then get rid of the assistant coaches. Somehow it's actually worked out better for them, and Jason Ryan and the like are obviously going to walk away with a lot of credibility in that. I will say that it's tough because of COVID and the impact to every country in that, the loss of some of the all black greats previously or in the previous sort of cycle, and then I must give him credit, albeit again his record at Super Rugby was always questionable. I do think he sort of always held a bit of class in how he sort of held himself in the being criticised by the New Zealand media, but also post World Cup final.
No, I think he did, and he had a lot going on. Like he had it saying the other day already, just like he's got dealt cards in his hand that no other All Black coaches ever had to deal with, and I think that was a fair summary.
Yeah.
It wasn't just COVID. They've had the big negotiations going here in the background in terms of the private equity deal where they've sold.
Yes, Silver Lake.
I think it's 25% to Silver Lake.
Clear, yeah.
The players were the ones that had the big issues and were throwing up a lot of the issues there. So he's had a lot to deal with, and I think he's handled himself in that very Kiwi manner of you don't say anything until you get really upset, and then you might say something. So he's quietly gone about it, but to be fair, he was always on a harding to nothing, and I don't know if it's he got the job, he got them to the final, but I'd said it before, I never thought they would win the World Cup with him, and I know that sounds very harsh for a team that lost by 1 point.
Yeah,
but he doesn't instill confidence, and I can tell you that they're getting the exact opposite with the man that comes in. We spoke about Rugby Australia and the need to clean up at the top and sort out their governance. Yeah. I've spoken in the past about New Zealand's issues there, but 100% that it needs to happen.
When you think about a modern day coach, Robinson's right up there, right? In terms in terms of how he approaches the game, but also the buy-in from players and the like.
Oh, hugely. And his ability to communicate across generations is huge, which is where I think Foster struggled.
Yeah. But look, not every coach can break dance after a go, mate. So, do you count every coach against that?
Exactly. But listen, not every coach has ever won 7 Super Rugby titles in a row.
Yeah,
so
unbelievable.
The man's gravy. And I generally think the world doesn't know what we're in for with what he's going to do with the All Blacks.
Yeah,
especially with the crop of players he's got.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think there's going to be some really interesting and possibly big holes to fill, albeit it seems like some players might go away for a couple of years and then come back. So it should be interesting. Certainly a conversation for another day. If we look at his opposite number, mate, and I guess the winning coach, maybe often doesn't get the credit he deserves because of Rusty and who Rusty is. How will Jacques Nienaber be remembered, mate?
I hope as the great coach he is. This is a guy that's got into coaching, I feel, for all the right reasons. He was a physio and just hung around rugby teams. But Pika, he just loves defence. He's, I've spoken about every person, I guess, involved in the game kind of wants to leave their mark on it in some way, shape or form. And he's left his mark on defence. He's the defence structure he brought into the Springboks was revolutionary. And it's made a massive impact. So hopefully the world remembers him fondly. I'm very excited to see what he goes and does at Leinster.
Yep.
And let's see where he goes. But as he said, he doesn't think his Springbok journey's over, and that's telling.
It's nice, mate. Yeah, I thought he held himself, because it's been and don't get me wrong, I guess Rassi and we've spoken about it before, Rassi and Jacques have got that credibility in the bank by winning the 2019 World Cup to allow us that inconsistent period of building depth of players and the like. And don't get me wrong, they haven't gone out there
accidentally winning a World Cup in between it.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong, I don't think they've gone out to lose games at any point, but they've understood that at times
there's a bigger picture.
Results might be indifferent.
You asked me though, what will he be remembered for? What would I like him to be remembered for? And if I'm being honest with you, the best thing I hope he can get remembered for is the team environment he created around the Springboks. Don't underestimate how bad it was when they took over, and don't underestimate what we spoke about earlier with Eddie and different coaching styles, is how the Springbok team has traditionally been managed and run.
Yeah.
And I would not have called it probably a family environment and all these things, but they've created some beautiful magic, and I'm hoping there's going to be some books and documentaries and everything else so the story gets told and gets shared. But if there's something he gets remembered for, I definitely hope it's for that environment they created, because it sounds like it was magical.
Yeah. Well, Chasing the Sun was based on Japanese, and I think one of the flags, I think, is that way reflective. What will the next documentary be called? Coffee and Croissant? Or it should be a cracker either way, because we know it's got a happy ending, mate. But
we'll know what Eddie's is. We know what Eddie's is going to be called. Uppercut.
The brutal uppercut to everyone, including myself. What is Rassi and Jacques going down as the greatest coaching ticket of all time? I mean, I'm not sure anyone else outside of 11 and 15 All Blacks could.
To be honest with you, I think the next little bit probably determines that. Because I think people still think they didn't deserve it, which blows my mind. But listen, though, the first ever coaching to win back-to-back hasn't been done.
I think the big thing for me is when you look at that 2011-15 All Blacks, New Zealanders were typically underperforming, always going into a World Cup as favourites. When you consider where Rassi and Jacques took over our team and where they were, to selecting the first Black Springbok captain, to turning around, you say, the culture and within the team, to the genius tactics, and as you've pinpointed on many occasions, the innovation of what they've brought to the game. And if people can't recognise that, they're not looking closely enough. No one's ever done 6-2. 6-2 was controversial till 7-1 was controversial.
Yeah, I know.
Pulling high-profile players off within 30 minutes, 40 minutes of a game, because they're not operating at the level that they need to, and the team and their coaching ticket believe they need to make changes, as they did in the semis.
Or taking you're one of the world's best players and putting it on the bench because you want to finish.
how the bench has been utilised. Not, it's interesting. I think one of the chaps, I've heard one of the Irish chaps, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to say anything against Joe Smith. I think traditionally coaches have looked at the bench as a risk mitigation. If X, Y gets injured, I've got these guys, and so on. Where I think Rassie have obviously and Jock have taken that into perspective, but rather looked at how they can utilise the bench to win, rather than just a purely an injury risk exercise. An opportunity to look at how can we take the game to another level, or take the game away from the team, or how can we change the game in terms of strategy and tactics, in terms of different skills. You're looking at Dion Ferree and Quacker Smith. That's not the bomb squad of 2019. They're not as big and brutal as those boys. The fetches, the work rate for me is much higher. And he said, don't get me wrong, I still love the bomb squad and what it brought and how they made. I think Skulk Brits said it, and John Smith. He made being on the bench. They made that sort of piece kind of cool.
Privilege. Yeah,
it's kind of cool.
So to sum it up perfectly, one of the stats, I couldn't believe it when I was looking at it through. I thought the website I was using was broken, but I went and double checked it. In the last 10 minutes of the final, South Africa had 75% territory. That didn't happen by mistake. That happened because they brought Villy on, they had Andre Pollard, Faf, we spoke about how hard he worked and he did it. That was by design. And that's how the bench was, that's how everything went. And they are tacticians that the game has never seen before.
Yeah, so a big point for you, mate, is, or something that you wanted to note is, why are the Springboks not appreciated?
Yeah, listen, controversial topic, but we'll get onto it. But it's
a fact. It's a fact. Like, there's a lot of comments.
It's a fact. No, and listen, like this is not where I live. Like I always knew I was going to get a bit of a salty response here, but also mainly because I didn't want it to be a refereeing thing. But I've been shocked by how, especially the Northern Hemisphere teams and a few others have been so anti-South Africa winning, and it makes me think back. Well, the last time it was like this, South Africa won in 2007, and we were so disliked for winning that World Cup, they went and changed the rules. And they brought in those things called the ELVs. And if you remember them, the elves.
Experimental something? Or?
Yeah, law variations. Experimental law variations. Yeah. And it was essentially, you couldn't get a penalty from scrum dominance, so you got a free kick. And they changed some of the breakdown rules. Okay, and also you couldn't get penalties. Because they didn't want to see teams dominate without the ball, i.e. defensively orientated teams. And all that happened was the Boks dominated everyone even more. And I've had to sit back and go, why do people not enjoy the Springboks winning so much? And my working theory at the moment is we are a defensively orientated team, but more to the point, we're combative and we're confrontational. And what we like to put pressure on pressure. We like to get right in people's faces, and look them in the eye. And a lot of teams and a lot of countries don't like that because it starts exposing your weaknesses. And I think this final summed it up brilliantly. Rich, I've been really struggling to find the stats, but I'm pretty sure the All Blacks made more handling errors in this game than they did the entire World Cup campaign. Richie Mwanga hadn't made any
handling error against Ireland. And don't get me wrong, the weather plays a part, but the intensity of what they were facing.
Eben Etzebeth and Peter Steph
melting your face off in the first minute. Sends a warning. It's coming. It's coming.
There's a natural life preservation instinct within us as animals that kicks in. And as South Africans, we love that. That's where we thrive. But I genuinely believe other countries and that don't like seeing us winning because it exposes those type of things in our teams and within our heroes. Yeah. And it also, to be fair, we in a way stop teams expressing themselves. But listen, that's the joys of it, and it's one of the things I love with rugby. Rugby is a game where you can score without possession. Like it remains a contest.
But also you can't tell
hope we don't break that.
Yeah, but people can't tell that they don't like seeing a Lakanya and with back passes going out the back and Cheslin Colby and the class that we've got in the back
line. Dwayne Vermeulen at the last World Cup with the free and backhanded to Free de Preur.
Yeah,
and we just also have different skill sets to
But that's what makes it
you know
interesting.
what other people
your
have.
style, we don't have to. We don't have to operate your style, but that's why it's interesting to watch.
But
And
yeah, that's my
do
working theory.
Yeah, I do think
on
a
why
big
people
one
don't like seeing the Springboks.
is our fellow countrymen saying 32-12 to any rebuttal. Probably doesn't do ourselves any favours.
There is a bit of that, and I did maybe wear this attire to the office for the first day.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Day 32.
Listen,
Dwight in his Springboks kit. Look, and Damien Willems.
Yeah, jeez, mate. I can't. Cheslin with his strapping still on. But I mean, listen, it's anyone that is outside of South Africa, I challenge you to go just look at the ticker parade they're having with the open bus going around the country. Just go have a look at that. It also makes me wonder, though, how many buses do they actually have, and how quickly did they get that stuff printed?
But Faf apologising because he had to go to a family funeral. Like, I just thought, that shows how it's seen as like an honour and a privilege to do it. But mate, when you think about how much booze you boys have been drinking, I mean, it must be for fuck's sake, we're gonna go fuck around Durban tomorrow. Oh, you're just like another day in the piss.
Yeah.
But it's seen as such an honour for those blokes to represent again the country. Still going around thanking everyone for the support. When you see that video of the lad shouting "Elizabeth," right, and then he shout "Elizabeth," and she runs off, and then to see the hug that he gives him, and he fucking knocks him all back. He just grabs him with such conviction. Elizabeth, and that emotion, that is so genuine, mate, and that's what sport's all about. But sometimes some people will never understand. I guess if you look at how the RG celebrated, the FIFA World Cup. Sometimes a certain sport in a certain country, is so connected that maybe sometimes some people elsewhere can't quite grasp it. But if we think about a country that is very passionate, mate, is the French. They probably nicked the World Cup from us, so it's nice to win our second one on French soil.
Yeah.
But what were your thoughts, mate, on how they hosted the World Cup?
I'm kind of nearly glad they did nick it, because otherwise, South Africa just might not have had enough electricity, and that would have just been a disaster.
Yeah.
But I think they've been superb hosts. I enjoyed how every single stadium was absolutely packed.
Yeah.
But more importantly, the atmosphere and the vibe they brought it. You could hear in the final it wasn't the same, because New Zealand is a country that just doesn't make a noise in the stadium.
New Zealanders, because people said it was more South Africans, but I could hear whenever the ref made a decision that, maybe someone. It sounded like a lot of whistles. Right. It sounded
whistles and the booing.
It sounded like the locals were back of the Kiwis, but that's all good.
We spoke about that from when we first started, about the French are going to throw their newspapers and everything else because if they don't like you, and they should be celebrated for it. I think they've been superb hosts. I think they've learnt actually how much beer you have to have at rugby games though. So there's a learning for them. There was obviously a lot of controversy around the anthems and stuff, but listen, they took the criticism board, they fixed it, they changed it up, and they sorted things out. So. Now, by all accounts, everyone said it was wonderful. They've had a big bug outbreak and all sorts of things, but they took it all in their stride and marched on. I thought they were good. I thought, hindsight, it's also actually a great location, just because of all the travelling fans. Nowhere else in the world, I don't think you're going to get the same amount of travel and visiting and let's call it away team fans. I thought it was superb, and they've done very well. And listen, they're still going to be hurting about not winning a World Cup, and they've been dominated in the under-20s. I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon.
There'll be one hell of a team to beat in Australia, mate. That'll be that will be for sure. If we think about what happened, I think it was within 24 hours afterwards, isn't it? The World Rugby Awards. Surveyor being a worthy winner.
I think so. Listen, he's unbelievable. You could play any position on a rugby field. He gives you everything. He's got I enjoy him. I'd no issues with him winning that award. I think he deserved it. And the one thing is for his approach to the game, he has been remarkably consistent right through Super Rugby. He led the Hurricanes incredibly well this year.
Yeah, 100%, mate. And sorry, I'm just looking down here if anyone's on YouTube, just trying to pick out the World Rugby Men's Team of the Year. So if we look at Cyril Bay, makes sense. Yep. I think he's played every game. He's probably been one of the stalwarts of the French team. Mm-hmm. Dan Sheehan at hooker. Any objections? Well, look, you'll put your team. But if we look at Tag Furlong, I thought he might have been at risk. I think Etzebeth and Barrett at second row makes sense. Caelan Doris, I think, has been the guy that's really stepped up to a wonderful year from Van der Fleer the year before. Severe, obviously, at 8 with Olivon at 7.
Blindside.
Yeah. DuPont, no surprise. Richie Mwanga, questionable. Like I said, on his day, he's shit hot. It's just those days are a little bit indifferent.
Yeah.
Bundiaki had a great return to form this year and certainly was I think he won 2 man of the matches in the pool stages. Gary Ringrose joins him in the centres. Maybe a question mark there. Will Jordan certainly gets his praise, even if he's not playing a lot. And don't get me wrong, what a fabulous player. And then Ramos at fullback and Pernod, who I just think is an absolute freak on the other wing. Good all-round team. Maybe 2 or 3 question marks. South Africans will say, as World Cup winners, we should have had more. I remember when Zidane won the Ballon d'Or after, I think they got to the final. Obviously, I think he had buttered Materazzi in that final. Or did they win that one? Anyway, he hadn't played outside of the World Cup. Louis Figo was by far the best player in the world. And as he said, later they became teammates of Real Madrid, funnily enough. But he said, is this award the player of the World Cup or is it the best player of the year? Funnily enough, Figo won it the year later, probably not playing as well. But these things are always a little bit fickle. But I do think the volume of games you play should definitely come into it.
It should, but also I think you do need the World Cup is still the pinnacle.
It's the centrepiece, yeah.
Yeah, so, no, listen, I think it says a lot about the Springboks that they didn't dominate the team that won. And I love it. So I'm fine with them not there. Like, I put a tweet out and it actually got a little bit of traction, which was that I said,
does it get a bit of heat?
Fans and a few other things celebrate the team of the year.
Yeah.
The players, they care about the contracts. Who's got the best contract for that position? And I can tell you that's what the Springboks care about. And that'll get told because that's where you'll see where the rubber hits the road, who's getting the big money contracts. So I'm pretty sure the Springboks will be comfortable with it where they are.
Yeah.
I mean, talking to that team, listen, for me, it's hard to not look past the Springbok props. If I go, I'm selecting props because they're the scrum. I'm going with Ox and Frans Malherbe. So those are my guys. Big
Francie.
Big Francie gets his penalties every game.
Yeah.
Eben, I don't think you won't find a rugby supporter in the world that won't say he's been the best lock. I mean, his athletic abilities, his ability on the kick chase now from a box kick's ridiculous.
I think you've said about his rugby brain is phenomenal, and he obviously he just gets branded as the enforcer, of which he is. But he's far more dynamic than that.
He's evolved a lot. So no, he's good. Aili Toje, we chatted obviously off air. He's definitely hit his form again, especially over the World Cup. So he was good. The guy that's been the absolute bolter for me, who, I'll be honest, I mean, I didn't see much of him, but I thought he was superb during the World Cup. So I've actually put him as my open side, was Jack Morgan, the Welsh captain. It's just a crazy Welshman.
Big praise. I think he's captain, isn't he? He's only what?
Yeah, and he's young. He's young
21 or something.
Leads from the front, gets stuck in, big engine on him. So no, he's been good. I don't think you can look past Peter Steph to Toy, and that's been the whole year. So how he was in their team, I will ask that question. I don't know. The only other one where probably a bit different to that is I thought George Ford has been superb. He wasn't just good at this World Cup, and he had some commanding performances from a 10. But even this year, he has been club hopping around. I don't think he's been treated very well. And
He's
but
left Leicester. He's got a sale.
yeah, he was superb this season. He's the
Leicester
little
won
general.
the title, albeit he went off
Yeah.
early in the final because he got injured.
Yeah, but no, I thought he was probably the best 10 in the world, and Will Jordan. I've chosen Mark Talia. He got Breakout Player of the Year. I just think he's superb.
Yeah.
He broke. He broke 40 tackles or beat 40 defenders in the whole Rugby World Cup, including 9 in the final.
Yeah,
and that was, you could see every time he got the ball, Russie had told them, he's like,
Panic
you get
stations.
that guy. And Peter Steph Detroit was just running, like jumping on him. Like it was, yeah. So, no. But no, that was it. I also had Jesse Creel. I just thought he left the World Cup by far the best outside centre in the whole tournament. And he came in with a lot of people not thinking he was.
Dilande must have ran Bundyaki close.
He would have, but I think Aki was he had a really good World Cup.
Yeah, had a few X Factor games, didn't he?
Yeah. I think he got given some bitter medicine. There was a time where he wasn't even starting.
He looks like he had a bit of a blowout with. He's much loved in Galway. Is it Galway? Oh no, sorry, Connacht. But there seems like there was within the last 12 months a bit of a dispute there. I'm not sure what that's in reference to, but yeah, he's had a cracker. So if we finish the poddy, mate, with a big question, the All Blacks 2015 versus the Springboks 2023. What you saying? What you saying, boy?
Oh mate, that's a tough one.
I reckon you have to have Mark start and Lakanya in the team.
Yeah, you would.
But I thought on first thoughts, I thought, I mean, they've got 3 of some of the best players in Nonu. Well, and type 5 to be fair, in Retallick and Whitelock in their prime. But then, Carter and Nonu for me are outstanding. And I thought, well, you've only got Sonny Bill that maybe has that true X Factor coming. Well, like you said, you had Franks and
that team was
Barrett
stacked.
coming off.
Bowden Barrett coming off the bench. Funny, this will be a pub quiz one day, I'm telling you. But Bowden Barrett becomes the first ever player to score a try in 2 separate World Cup finals.
Yeah.
So, I'd be honest, that All Black team I absolutely loved and adored. I won't even lie, they set the standard for a long time. But as I said to you, they only made that final by about that much because Pollard hit the pole with a penalty and it came off.
Yeah.
And I think this Springbok team is better than that Springbok team.
Oh, yes, easily.
I think the Springbok team could... And only just because the game has changed a bit in this time, for good and for bad, but these guys are something else. And I just think the amount of power they have... Like, when I talk about a guy like a Ox Inche, he's built to scrum, mate. He's probably as, if he sat down or lay on his side or stood up, he's the same size. Yeah, he's the same size. But his ability
go down
to
the wire, right? It will be one of those 10 games, 5 apiece kind of scenario, potentially. I mean, it'd be so good.
From 2019 until now, it was 3 apiece. The Springboks have now got it 4-3. It's funny enough, so many World Cups we have.
Well, that wraps it up, mate. It's been awesome. I think we will have a discussion off air and maybe looking at teams and what they've got to do moving forward post World Cup. But for now, mate, thanks again for your support. It's been awesome. Obviously, as fans, I think we both probably thought it was a great opportunity for the Springboks, but in what pool they ended up in the route to the final, it was probably just going to be too much. The New Zealanders played 3 top teams. They lost 2 games. We played 6 and lost 1. Deserved winners in the end. What a World Cup. To win each knockout game by 1 point. For Pollard to kick 13 out of 13. it just seems somehow, some way, mate, was written in the stars, I'll be honest. And beyond our wildest expectations, pal.
It was. I'm saying I genuinely, I had hope they would. I had a little bit of belief, but I just thought it was too far. And I'm so happy they've done it. And they deserve it. That's the one thing, and that's what upsets me when people say, "Oh, they deserve it." It's like, no ways, mate. They deserved it. They played all the top teams.
You don't go on that run,
no,
and win. And the fact that they've done it by 1 point in each of those games,
they found a way to win.
I think the quarterfinal was the best game of rugby I've seen, and you take into consideration that 2 of the best games in the World Cup ever happened between South Africa, Ireland, New Zealand.
Yeah,
and then for that other quarterfinal, what a World Cup and 2 of those games.
There's this great belief, and I've chatted with a few guys here about it, where sometimes you don't want to be like people go about the greatest team. It's like, well, what's the greatest team? But you just want to be hard to beat, and these Springboks are hard to beat, mate, and they've proven that.
Yeah, so congrats to Rusty, Jacques, Sia and the boys, mate. You made South Africa proud. Condolences to the All Blacks. 1 point after being a man down so early. Hell of a fight. The Springboks just kept finding a way. So until we speak again, Dwight, off to bed, mate, you go. We'll chat soon.